In 1994, John Nash won the Nobel Prize in economics. His theories revolutionized our understanding of markets. They forever changed how we understand human competition, from business negotiations to military strategies. But few knew the truth. For decades, this extraordinary genius had fought a silent battle, a battle against his own mind, a battle that almost destroyed everything he had built. This is the story of how a brilliant mind conquered the mysteries of economics, but lost itself in the process. What price would you be willing to pay to change the world forever? John Forbes Nash Jr. was born on June 13, 1928, in Bluefield, West Virginia. His father was an electrical engineer. His mother was a school teacher, a middle-class family that valued education above all else. From an early age, John was different. While other children played baseball, he lost himself in worlds of numbers and patterns. He built homemade radios in the basement. He experimented with chemicals from the local pharmacy. His mother noticed something special about him when he was just 12 years old. John could solve complex mathematical problems in his head while walking to school. He saw patterns in clouds, in falling leaves, in the behavior of his classmates. But there was something more. John saw connections where others saw only chaos, hidden patterns in human behavior that no one else perceived. It was as if he had access to a secret code of the universe. At Bluefield High School, his teachers didn't know what to do with him. John solved geometry problems in ways that didn't appear in any textbook. When they asked how he arrived at the answer, he simply shrugged. To him, it was obvious. His classmates considered him strange. John preferred the library to playground games. He read university-level mathematics books, while others struggled with basic algebra. It wasn't arrogance. He simply lived in a different world. In 1945, at age 17, he entered Carnegie Institute of Technology to study chemical engineering. His father had chosen that career, thinking it would be practical, but mathematics called to him with an irresistible force. During his first year, John immediately stood out. His mathematics professors were amazed by his ability to see solutions that escaped much more experienced minds. He could solve in minutes problems that took other students hours. But John was restless. Chemical engineering felt limiting. In 1948, he made the decision that would change his life. He switched to pure mathematics. It was his destiny. His professor Richard Duffin wrote a graduate school recommendation letter that consisted of a single line: "This man is a genius." It was all he needed to say. But genius comes with a price. And John Nash was about to discover it. In 1948, Nash arrived at Princeton University for his doctorate, the most prestigious university in America. Here, among the brightest minds in the country, John Nash was going to change the world. Princeton in the 1940s was an intellectual hotbed. Albert Einstein walked its halls. John von Neumann developed game theory. Kurt Gödel explored the limits of mathematical logic. And in the midst of all this, a 20-year-old from West Virginia was about to make history. Nash was peculiar, even by Princeton standards. He avoided eye contact. He spoke in whispers. He preferred working alone until the early hours. His peers considered him arrogant, but the truth was more complex. John saw the world fundamentally differently. Where others saw simple competition, he saw complex systems of interdependence. Where others saw chaos in markets, he saw hidden equilibrium waiting to be discovered. In 1949, at age 21, Nash wrote a doctoral thesis of just 27 pages that would forever change the world economy. He called it Non-Cooperative Games. The title was modest. The implications were revolutionary. His central idea was elegant but profound. Nash proposed that in any competitive situation, There exists an equilibrium point where no participant can improve their position by unilaterally changing their strategy. This would become known as Nash equilibrium. It sounds abstract, but its implications were enormous. This theory explained everything from why companies set certain prices to how nations negotiate peace treaties. Nash had cracked the mathematical code of competitive human behavior. The beauty of his theory lay in its universality. It applied to gunfights in the Old West, to wage negotiations, to the Cold War arms race. Any situation where one person's decisions affected others. His professors were astonished. Albert Tucker, his thesis advisor, knew he had witnessed something extraordinary. But Nash, with his characteristic indifference, simply moved on. He had no idea he had created a tool that would transform economics, political science, and military strategy. In 1950, he graduated with honors from Princeton. Job offers arrived from the best universities: Harvard, MIT, Stanford. John Nash, at 22, was a rising star, but the brightest stars often burn fastest. In 1951, Nash arrived at MIT as an assistant professor. MIT in the 1950s was the epicenter of the scientific revolution transforming the world. At MIT, Nash continued developing his theories with obsessive intensity. He worked on differential geometry, game theory, and partial differential equations. Every problem he touched was transformed under his mathematical genius. His colleagues respected him, but also feared him. Nash had a disconcerting way of making complex problems seem trivial. His mind operated on a level few could follow. But there was something more. Small signs his colleagues began to notice with growing concern. Nash sometimes got lost in conversations that made no sense to anyone else. He talked about patterns in license plate numbers. He saw hidden meanings in newspaper headlines. In 1957, he met Alicia Lopez Harrison de Lardet, a physics student at MIT. She was beautiful, intelligent, and saw something special in this peculiar mathematician. They married on February 1st, 1957. Alicia believed she could understand John in a way no one else could. She saw his genius, but also his vulnerability. What she didn't know was that she was about to embark on the most difficult journey of her life. Nash continued producing brilliant work. In 1958, he published revolutionary results that established him as one of the most promising mathematicians of his generation. His colleagues predicted he would win the Fields Medal. But in 1959, something began to change. Nash started behaving strangely. He talked about government conspiracies. He saw sinister connections that didn't exist. He believed foreign communists were infiltrating MIT. The reality was much crueler than anyone could imagine. In 1959, John Nash began hearing voices that no one else could hear. He saw people that no one else could see. His brilliant mind, which had deciphered the secrets of human competition, now betrayed him in the cruelest possible way. The hallucinations began gradually. At first, just whispers at the edges of his consciousness. But gradually, they became more intense, more real, more terrifying. Nash believed he was being recruited by secret government agencies to decipher enemy codes. He saw hidden messages in mathematics journals. He believed red numbers on magazine covers contained classified information directed specifically at him. At first, Nash desperately tried to hide it. He continued teaching. He continued researching. But the hallucinations became more intense each day. The line between reality and fantasy slowly faded. Alicia watched with horror as the man she loved vanished before her eyes. The genius who had conquered Princeton and MIT now struggled to distinguish between real and imaginary. Nash began filling notebooks with equations that made no sense. He wrote letters to foreign embassies offering his services as a codebreaker. He believed he was being pursued by government agents. In February 1959, Nash was involuntarily hospitalized at McLean Hospital. The diagnosis was devastating: paranoid schizophrenia. For a man whose identity was tied to his mind, it was intellectual death. The treatments of the 1960s were brutal: electroshock therapy that erased memories, antipsychotic medications that clouded his thinking. Nash became a shadow of himself. Alicia was pregnant when John was first hospitalized. Their son was born on May 19, 1959, while his father fought invisible demons. Alicia faced an impossible decision: how to raise a child while caring for a husband who no longer recognized her? The following years were hell. Nash went in and out of psychiatric hospitals. His mathematical contributions stopped. The man who had revolutionized economics could no longer handle basic mathematics. In 1963, Alicia could take no more. She divorced John, but never abandoned him. She continued caring for him, allowing him to live in her house like a ghost of what he once was. For nearly 3 decades, John Nash wandered Princeton's halls like a fallen legend. Students knew him as the Phantom of Fine Hall, a living reminder of how genius can become a curse. But then, something extraordinary began to happen. In the 1980s, slowly, almost imperceptibly, Nash began to recover. It wasn't a medical miracle. It wasn't a revolutionary treatment. Nash simply began rejecting his hallucinations, using the same rigorous logic he once applied to mathematics. As he explained years later, "I began to intellectually reject some of the delusionally influenced lines of thinking which had been characteristic of my orientation." It was as if he had learned to apply the scientific method to his own mind. He began questioning his hallucinations the same way he would question a flawed mathematical proof. His recovery was gradual but steady. He began participating again in mathematical seminars at Princeton. His colleagues, who had given him up for lost, watched in amazement as he slowly returned to intellectual life. In 1994, something unthinkable happened. John Nash was awarded the Nobel Prize in economics for his work in game theory developed 45 years earlier. The world finally recognized what his colleagues had known since 1950. Nash had fundamentally changed our understanding of human competition and cooperation. His work had influenced fields as diverse as evolutionary biology, political science, and military strategy. But the prize came with cruel irony. He had lost 30 years of productive life, 3 decades where he could have revolutionized mathematics again and again. In his Nobel acceptance speech, Nash was characteristically modest. He spoke about the importance of rationality, but also about the limits of human logic. He had learned that even the brightest minds are vulnerable. In 2001, Alicia and John remarried. After 38 years of separation, divorce, and unconditional care, they had found their way back to each other. It was a love story that had survived genius, madness, and time. Nash continued working in mathematics until his final days. He never completely recovered the mental speed of his youth, but his wisdom was deeper. He had learned something no equation could teach: the importance of human connection and the power of unconditional love. His equilibrium theory was applied to fields he never imagined. Biologists used it to understand cooperation evolution. Political scientists applied it to international negotiations. Military strategists employed it for complex operations. The work of a 21-year-old had permeated virtually every aspect of human knowledge. But perhaps his greatest achievement wasn't mathematical. Nash demonstrated that it's possible to return from the abyss of mental illness, that the human mind, even when broken, can find ways to heal itself. On May 23, 2015, John and Alicia Nash died in a car accident in New Jersey. They were returning from Norway, where John had received the Nobel Prize. They died together, as they had lived their final years, united by love that had survived everything. The story of John Nash teaches us something profound about human genius. His mind, capable of deciphering the most complex patterns of human behavior, couldn't decipher his own internal patterns for decades. Nash once said, "I can see there's a connection between not being completely rational and being able to see things that others cannot see." Perhaps his illness wasn't just a curse. Perhaps it was part of what allowed him to see the world so differently, to see equilibrium where others saw chaos, to see patterns where others saw randomness. Today, every time two companies compete, every time countries negotiate, every time we make group decisions, we're using the principles John Nash discovered in a 27-page thesis when he was 21 years old. His legacy lives in every financial market, in every diplomatic negotiation, in every moment where humans must decide between competing and cooperating. John Nash left us more than theorems and equations. He left us a story of human triumph over adversity, a demonstration that even when our minds betray us, we can find ways to rebuild our lives. His story reminds us that behind every great discovery is a real person, with real struggles, and that human genius comes in many forms, sometimes brilliant and clear, other times fragmented and painful, but always deeply human. Nash's recovery also challenged medical beliefs of his era. In the 1960s and 70s, schizophrenia was considered a life sentence. Doctors believed that once someone developed the disease, they could never fully recover. Nash proved them wrong. His method of recovery was unique. Instead of relying solely on medications, Nash used his mathematical training to rationally analyze his own hallucinations. He developed what he called reality criteria to distinguish between what was real and what was a product of his illness. This rational approach to mental illness has influenced modern treatments. Therapists now teach patients similar techniques to question and evaluate their own thoughts. Nash, unknowingly, had pioneered an approach that would help thousands of people in the following decades. The Nash equilibrium found unexpected applications in the modern world. Technology companies use it to design auction algorithms for online advertising. Biologists apply it to understand how species evolve. Economists use it to predict market behaviors. Even in everyday situations, we live by Nash's principles. When we decide which route to take to avoid traffic, we're participating in a Nash game. When companies set competitive prices, they're seeking a Nash equilibrium. When countries negotiate trade agreements, they're navigating the principles he discovered. Nash's influence extends beyond academia. His story has inspired books, films, and plays. The movie A Beautiful Mind introduced his story to millions who had never heard of game theory. His life became a symbol that genius and vulnerability can coexist. But perhaps most importantly is what Nash teaches us about the nature of the human mind. He shows us that the same capacity that allows us to see hidden patterns and solve complex problems can also lead us down dangerous paths. The line between genius and madness is thinner than we'd like to admit. His legacy continues to grow. New generations of mathematicians, economists, and scientists build upon his foundations. His ideas continue evolving and finding new applications in an increasingly complex world. The story also teaches us about the importance of unconditional support. Alicia Nash became a symbol of loyalty and love that transcends the most difficult circumstances. Her decision to remain by John's side, even when he no longer recognized her, demonstrated that true love can survive the most extreme tests. Nash's journey from brilliant student to Nobel laureate to mental patient and back to respected mathematician is one of the most remarkable stories in modern science. It shows us that human potential is both limitless and fragile. His work continues to shape our world in ways both visible and invisible. Every time we use GPS navigation, we're benefiting from algorithms based on game theory. Every time we bid in an online auction, we're participating in systems designed using Nash's principles. But beyond the practical applications, Nash's story offers something more valuable: hope. Hope that even when we face our darkest moments, recovery is possible. Hope that love and perseverance can overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. John Nash's life was a testament to the complexity of human genius. He showed us that extraordinary minds can achieve extraordinary things, but they can also suffer in extraordinary ways. His story reminds us to be compassionate toward those who struggle with mental illness. In the end, Nash's greatest contribution may not have been his mathematical theorems, but his demonstration that the human spirit can endure, adapt, and ultimately triumph over even the most challenging circumstances. The question his life posed continues to resonate. What price are we willing to pay for our greatest dreams? Nash paid an extraordinary price, but he also achieved something extraordinary. He changed our fundamental understanding of how humans interact, compete, and cooperate.